The scream tore through the winter silence just as Dane Morrison reached the frozen lake, and he watched in horror as the ice gave way beneath the orc woman who had been crossing it, swallowing her into the black water below. He did not think. There was no time for the prejudice that had been bred into him since childhood, no moment to consider that she was one of them, one of the greenskins who raided human settlements and were supposed to be monsters. All he saw was someone drowning, and his body moved before his mind could catch up. Dane ran across the shore to where he had been chopping firewood, grabbed his heavy axe, and sprinted toward the weakened section of ice where she had gone under. The surface had already begun to close over the hole, thin new ice forming in the frigid air, sealing her tomb. He could see her shape beneath the surface, thrashing, her hands beating uselessly against the ice from below. The sight made his blood run cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. Dane raised the axe high and brought it down with all his strength, shattering through the ice. Once, twice, 3 times he struck, widening the hole until he could see her clearly. Her eyes were wide with terror, her green skin already turning darker from lack of air, her black hair floating around her face like seaweed. Without hesitation, Dane dropped the axe and dove into the water. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath, but he forced himself deeper. His hands found her arm, solid and muscular beneath his grip, and he pulled. She was heavy, heavier than he expected, all muscle and strength even as she weakened. He kicked hard, dragging them both toward the hole in the ice, toward the gray light that meant air and life. His lungs screamed. The cold was already making his limbs clumsy. They broke the surface together, both gasping. Dane hooked his arm under hers and kicked toward the edge of the hole, where the ice was thicker. He had to get them out before the cold took them both. With strength born of pure desperation, he heaved her up onto the solid ice, then dragged himself after her. For a moment, they both just lay there, coughing and shaking, but the danger was not over. The winter air was just as deadly as the water when they were soaked through. Dane forced himself to his feet, his wet clothes already stiffening. The orc woman was trying to rise, but her movements were sluggish. Hypothermia was setting in fast. "Can you walk?" he asked through chattering teeth. She looked up at him, and he got his first clear look at her face. She was young, maybe his own age of 24 or close to it. Her tusks were small, barely protruding from her lower lip, and her eyes were a startling amber color. Right now, those eyes were filled with confusion and fear. "You saved me," she said, her voice rough from the lake water. "Why?" questions later. "We need to get warm or we will both die." He reached down and hauled her to her feet. She was tall, nearly his height, and when she swayed he had to brace her weight against him. His cabin was close, thank the gods. He had been living out here in the mountains for 3 years now, ever since the war ended, ever since he needed to get away from everything and everyone. The isolation had suited him. Until now, Dane half carried, half dragged her across the snow toward his cabin. His legs felt like wood, barely responding to his commands. The orc woman was not doing much better. By the time they reached his door, she was leaning heavily on him, her breathing labored. Inside, the fire he had left burning in the hearth was still going, filling the single room with blessed warmth. But warmth was not enough. They needed to get out of these wet clothes immediately. "Strip," Dane ordered, already fumbling with the buttons of his own shirt with numb fingers. Everything off, now. She stared at him and he realized how that must have sounded. "Hypothermia," he clarified through gritted teeth. "Wet clothes will kill us. I have blankets. Just get them off." He turned his back to give her privacy, though modesty seemed absurd when they were both dying. His fingers would barely work, but he managed to peel off his soaked shirt, then his boots and trousers. Behind him, he could hear her struggling with her own clothing. The sounds were painful, her movements clearly uncoordinated. "I cannot," she said finally, her voice small. "My hands will not work." Dane grabbed the thick wool blanket from his bed and wrapped it around his waist before turning. She had managed to remove her outer coat, but her tunic was still on, and she was pulling uselessly at the laces with fingers that would not bend. Her whole body was shaking so violently he could hear her teeth chattering. "I will help," he said, keeping his voice level and calm. "Just to get you out of those. Then blankets. Understand?" She nodded, her amber eyes watching him warily. He kept his movements brisk and impersonal as he unlaced her tunic and helped her pull it over her head, trying not to notice the strong lines of her shoulders, the scars that marked her green skin. Her trousers were next, and then he handed her the other blanket from his bed and turned away again while she wrapped herself. "Sit by the fire," he said. "I will make something hot to drink." She sank down onto the hearth stones without argument, the blanket pulled tight around her. Dane busied himself with the kettle, adding water and setting it over the fire, then rummaging for the herbs he used for tea. His hands were starting to work again, the warmth of the cabin seeping back into his flesh. The shaking was subsiding. As the water heated, he glanced at her. She was staring into the flames, her expression unreadable. In the firelight, her green skin had a warmer tone, almost olive. Her wet black hair hung in tangles past her shoulders. She looked lost. "What were you doing on the lake?" he asked. "Crossing it," she said. "I thought the ice was solid." "I have crossed frozen water before, but this. I did not see the weak spot until too late. You are lucky I was nearby." "Lucky." She repeated the word as if testing it. "I do not feel lucky, I feel like a fool." Dane poured the hot tea into 2 wooden cups and handed her one. Their fingers brushed, and he noticed hers were starting to regain their normal color. "That was good. Drink," he said. "It will help." She obeyed, wrapping both hands around the cup and taking a cautious sip. For a few minutes they sat in silence, drinking the tea, letting the warmth work its way back into their bones. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the shutters. The storm he had felt coming was arriving. "You should not have saved me," she said finally. Dane looked at her sharply. "What?" "I am an orc. Your people and mine, we are enemies. You risked your life for someone you should want dead. I do not want you dead. Your kind usually does." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a flat statement of fact, and somehow that made it worse. Dane thought about the war, about the battles he had fought, the orcs he had killed. He had been a soldier for 5 years, doing his duty, following orders. The orcs had been the enemy, faceless and fierce. But this woman in front of him, wrapped in his blanket and drinking his tea, was not faceless. She was real and vulnerable, and he had nearly watched her die. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Grisha." "I am Dane Morrison." He paused. "You are welcome to stay here tonight. The storm is getting worse and you should not travel in your condition." "I have no right to your hospitality." "You have the right of someone I pulled from a frozen lake. That counts for something, I think." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You are strange, Dane Morrison, so I have been told." He stood and went to his trunk, pulling out some of his clothes. They would be too large for her, but they were dry and warm. He handed them to her. "These will fit better than a blanket. You can change behind the partition there." She took them wordlessly and disappeared behind the wooden screen that separated his sleeping area from the rest of the cabin. Dane took the opportunity to pull on dry clothes of his own. His body still ached from the cold and the exertion, but he was alive. They both were. When Grisha emerged, she was swimming in his shirt and trousers, the sleeves rolled up multiple times, the waist cinched with a rope. Her hair was still wet, but she had combed it back with her fingers. She looked younger somehow, less like the fearsome warriors he remembered from the battlefield and more like someone who might have been a neighbor or a friend in a different world. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You are welcome." Dane moved to his small pantry. "Are you hungry? I have bread and cheese, some dried meat." "I do not want to take your food, Grisha." He turned to face her. "Stop arguing with me about every kindness. You nearly died today. Let me feed you." She blinked, clearly surprised by his tone, but she nodded. "Yes, I am hungry." They sat together at his small table and ate a simple meal. Dane found himself studying her when he thought she was not looking. Her hands were large and capable, with calluses that spoke of hard work. Her tusks were indeed small, just barely visible when she chewed. There was a scar across her left eyebrow, old and white against her green skin. "Why are you out here alone?" she asked, catching him looking. "I like the quiet. Most humans live in groups. Towns, villages. You are far from any settlement. That is the point." He took a drink from his cup. "I was a soldier in the war. When it ended, I did not want to go back to my old life. Too many memories, too much noise, so I came here. You fought against my people." "Yes." "And now you share your food with one." "Yes." He met her eyes. "Does that bother you?" "I do not know," she admitted. "I was not in the war. My clan kept me back, said I was too young, too valuable, but I heard the stories. I know what happened." "What are you doing out here, then?" "This is far from orc territory." Her expression shuddered. "I left my clan." "That is dangerous, is it not? I thought orcs did not survive well alone." "We do not," she said. "But I could not stay." The pain in her voice stopped him from pressing further. Whatever had driven her away from her people, it was clearly raw. He understood that feeling all too well. "You can stay here until the storm passes," he said. "After that, if you need somewhere to go for a while until you figure out your path, you can stay longer. I have space." She stared at him. "Why would you offer that?" "Because I know what it is like to need a place to hide from the world." For a long moment she said nothing. Then, very quietly, "You are the strangest human I have ever met." "I will take that as a compliment." This time her smile was real, small, but genuine, and Dane felt something shift in his chest. He told himself it was just the lingering effects of the cold water, the adrenaline of the rescue. But he knew, even then, that he was lying to himself. The storm raged for 3 days. Snow piled up against the cabin walls, and the wind howled through the mountain passes like a living thing. Dane and Grisha were trapped inside together, and in that forced proximity, something unexpected began to grow. At first they were cautious with each other, moving around the small space with exaggerated politeness. Dane gave her his bed and slept on a pile of furs by the fire. They spoke little, just the necessary words about food and chores and keeping the fire going. But as the hours stretched into days, the silence became less awkward and more companionable. Grisha proved to be practical and capable. She helped him prepare meals, mend a tear in one of his blankets, and stack firewood. Her strength was obvious. She could lift logs that would have required 2 humans, and she did it without apparent effort. But she was also careful, almost delicate in the way she handled his belongings, as if afraid she might break something. On the second night, as they sat by the fire after supper, Dane finally asked the question that had been nagging at him. "What made you leave your clan?" Grisha was quiet for so long he thought she would not answer. Then she said, "I refused a bonding. A bonding. A marriage, you would call it. The chieftain's son wanted me as his mate. I refused. In my clan, that is not done, especially when it is the chieftain's son. I was told I would accept or I would be cast out." She looked down at her hands. "I chose to leave before they could shame me further." "Why did you refuse him?" "Because I did not love him. because he was cruel and violent and I did not want to spend my life bearing children for someone I despised. Her voice was fierce now. They said I was foolish. That love was a luxury. That duty to the clan was all that mattered. But I could not do it. I would rather die alone in the wilderness than live that life. Dane felt a surge of respect for her. That took courage, or stupidity. She gave a bitter laugh. I have been wandering for 2 months. I have no destination, no plan. I just knew I had to get away. And then I fell through the ice like an idiot and nearly died anyway. But you did not die. No, a strange human man jumped into freezing water and saved me. She looked at him, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. Why did you really do it, Dane? You could have let me drown. No one would have known, no one would have blamed you. I would have known, he said simply. I would have blamed me. Even though I am an orc, you are a person. That matters more. She shook her head slowly, as if he had said something profound instead of obvious. Most humans would not agree. Most humans have not spent 3 years living alone on a mountain, thinking about what matters and what does not. What did you conclude? Dane considered the question. That kindness matters, that every life has value. That the reasons we fought that war were less clear than I was told they were. He poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise. I killed orcs in battle, Grisha. I did my duty as a soldier. But I have thought about those deaths, wondered about who they were, if they had families, if they believed they were fighting for something just. It haunts me. So when I saw you drowning, I could not let it happen. I could not add another death to the list, especially when I had the power to prevent it. You are troubled by the war. I am troubled by a lot of things. They fell into silence again, but it was different now, more comfortable. The walls between them, built by years of prejudice and conflict, were starting to crack. On the 3rd day, the storm finally broke. Dane opened the door to find the world transformed into a pristine white landscape, the sun glittering off the snow like diamonds. It was beautiful and deadly. The temperature had dropped even further. I should go, Grisha said from behind him. You have been generous, but I cannot impose any longer. Dane turned to look at her. She was wearing her own clothes again, dried by the fire. They were travel-worn and patched in places, but they fit her properly. She looked ready to walk back out into the wilderness alone. Where will you go? He asked. I do not know. South, perhaps. I have heard there are lands beyond the mountains where no one cares what you are. That is weeks of travel through winter. You will freeze or starve. Perhaps, she met his eyes. But it is my choice to make. He wanted to argue, to tell her it was a stupid choice, but he understood pride. He understood the need to control your own fate, even if that fate was hard. So instead he said, the offer stands. You can stay here as long as you need. I have enough supplies for 2, and the winter will be long. By spring, you will be stronger and the travel will be easier. Why would you want me here? Because. He paused, searching for the right words. Because I have been alone for 3 years, and I had forgotten what it was like to have someone to talk to. Because you make excellent tea and you are better at chopping wood than I am. Because I think we could help each other. Grisha studied his face as if looking for deception. You truly mean this? I do. I cannot pay you. I am not asking you to. She was quiet for a long time, her eyes distant. Then she said, until spring. I will stay until spring and help you with what needs doing. Then I will go. Agreed. It was a practical arrangement, nothing more. At least, that was what Dane told himself as he watched her unpack the few belongings she had been carrying. But there was a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the fire, and when she smiled at him in thanks, he felt it grow. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. They woke with the dawn, built up the fire, and prepared breakfast together. Dane would go out to check his traps and hunt when the weather permitted, while Grisha would manage the cabin. repair things that needed fixing, and prepare skins and meat from his catches. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Dane learned that Grisha had a sharp wit and a dry sense of humor. She told him stories about growing up in her clan, about the pranks she had played on her brothers, about the old grandmother who had taught her to track and hunt. She spoke of orc traditions, their music and celebrations, in a way that made them seem less foreign and more familiar. In turn, Dane told her about his childhood on a farm, about his father who had died when he was young, about his mother who had remarried a cruel man. He told her about joining the army to escape, about the friends he had made and lost in the war, about the reasons he could not go back to the settlements even after it ended. "You ever miss it?" she asked one night. "Being around other humans?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But not enough to leave. What about you? Do you miss your clan?" "I miss some of them," she said carefully. "My mother, my youngest brother, but I do not miss the life I would have had there. I do not regret my choice, even though it led you here to the middle of nowhere with a strange human." She smiled, especially because of that. The comment hung in the air between them, laden with meaning neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Dane looked away first, his heart beating faster than it should. As winter deepened, they grew more comfortable with each other. Grisha would tease him about his terrible singing when he thought she could not hear him outside. Dane would laugh at the faces she made when trying to eat the spicy stew he favored. They developed small rituals. The way she would hand him his coat before he went out into the cold, the way he would save her the best pieces of meat from the game he caught. It was during one of these ordinary moments that Dane realized he was in trouble. They were preparing dinner together, Grisha chopping vegetables while Dane stirred the pot over the fire. She said something amusing about a particularly clever rabbit that had evaded his traps 3 times, and he laughed. She laughed too, and when he looked at her, at the way her amber eyes crinkled at the corners and her tusks peeked out from her smile, his breath caught. She was beautiful. The thought struck him like a physical blow. Somewhere in the past weeks, she had stopped being an orc to him and had become simply Grisha. The green of her skin was as natural as the brown of his own. Her strength was attractive, not threatening. Her tusks were endearing, not frightening. And her smile made his chest feel tight in a way that had nothing to do with fear. He was falling for her. The realization terrified him. This was impossible, forbidden, wrong by every standard he had been raised with. Humans and orcs did not fall in love. They barely tolerated each other in times of peace. The war had been fought partly over the idea that the two races could never coexist peacefully. And yet here he was, standing in his cabin, realizing that he cared for her more than he had cared for anyone in years. "Dane." Grisha's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you well? You look strange." "I am fine," he said quickly, turning back to the pot. "Just thinking." "About what?" "Nothing important." But it was important, and it was only getting more important with each day that passed. He tried to push the feelings down, to tell himself it was just loneliness, just proximity. But when he lay on his furs at night and heard her breathing softly from the bed across the room, he knew he was lying to himself. Winter solstice came, the longest night of the year. Grisha told him that in her clan they would have celebrated with a great feast and dancing, honoring the return of the light. Dane told her about the quiet celebrations his mother had held when he was young, with candles and songs. "We could do something," he suggested. "Mark the occasion, even if it is just the two of us." "I would like that." So they prepared a special meal with the best of their supplies, roasted venison, roots cooked in herbs, even a precious apple that Dane had been saving. Grisha made a sweet bread from the last of their honey. They ate slowly, savoring every bite. After dinner, Grisha began to hum a melody. It was low and haunting, unlike anything Dane had heard before. When she noticed him listening, she stopped. "Do not stop," he said. "It is beautiful." "It is an old song," she said, "from my grandmother, about the sun returning after the dark." "Will you sing it for me?" She hesitated, then began again, this time with words in the orc tongue. Her voice was rich and warm, filling the cabin with sound. Dane did not understand the words, but he felt the emotion in them. Hope, perseverance, the promise of light after darkness. When she finished, there were tears in his eyes. "That was incredible," he said. "I have not sung in a long time," she admitted. "It felt good." They sat together by the fire, closer than usual. Dane was acutely aware of her presence, of the way her shoulder nearly touched his, of the warmth that radiated from her body. He wanted to reach out to take her hand, to tell her what he was feeling, but fear held him back. What if she did not feel the same? What if she was disgusted by the very idea? He could not risk the fragile friendship they had built. "Dane," she said softly, "thank you for all of this. For saving me, for letting me stay, for treating me like a person instead of a monster. It has meant more than you know." "You are not a monster," he said firmly. "You never were." She turned to look at him, her face so close to his. In the firelight, her eyes were molten gold. "What am I to you, then?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Dane's heart was pounding. This was the moment. He could tell her the truth, or he could retreat into safety. "You are my friend," he said, and hated himself for the cowardice even as the words left his mouth. Something flickered in her expression, too quick to read. Disappointment, relief. She looked back at the fire. "Yes, friends." The word felt like a door closing. They did not speak much for the rest of the night. When Grisha went to bed, Dane stayed by the fire, cursing himself. He had been afraid, and fear had stolen his chance. Maybe it was for the best, he told himself. Maybe friendship was all they could ever have. But the thought brought no comfort. January brought brutal cold and more snow. Dane and Grisha fell back into their routine, but something had shifted between them. There was a new tension in the air, an awareness that had not been there before. Dane would catch her looking at him sometimes, her expression unreadable. She would blush when he got too close, her green skin darkening slightly. They were both dancing around something neither wanted to name. One afternoon, Dane returned from checking his traps to find Grisha practicing with a long staff in the clearing in front of the cabin. She moved through a series of forms with fluid grace, the staff spinning and striking at invisible opponents. Her strength was obvious, but so was her skill. This was not just raw power. This was trained discipline. She noticed him watching and stopped, lowering the staff. "I needed to practice. I am getting soft, living in comfort." "You call this comfort?" Dane gestured at the snow-buried cabin. "Compared to sleeping in caves and scrounging for food." "Yes." She spun the staff once more, then planted it in the snow. "I have not fought in months. I worry I will forget how." "Why do you need to know how to fight?" "Because the world is dangerous. Because I am alone. Because if I meet humans less kind than you, I will need to defend myself." The reminder of the prejudice she would face when she left sent a spike of anger through Dane. "No one will hurt you while you are here. I know." Her voice was soft. "But I will not be here forever. Spring is still months away." "I know that too." They looked at each other across the snowy clearing. Dane wanted to tell her not to go, to stay with him, but the words would not come. Instead he said, "Teach me." "What?" "Teach me your fighting forms. I was a soldier, but I only know human techniques. Show me how orcs fight." Grisha looked surprised, then pleased. "You want to learn from me?" "I do." So she taught him. They spent an hour in the snow, Grisha correcting his stance, showing him the way orcs use their greater strength and reach. She was patient and encouraging, and when he finally managed a complicated spinning strike, she grinned with genuine delight. Good, you are learning. They were standing close, both breathing hard from exertion. Snow had begun to fall again, light flakes catching in her dark hair. Dane reached out without thinking and brushed one from her cheek. She went very still, her eyes locked on his. "Grisha," he said, his voice rough. "Yes. I." The words died in his throat. He dropped his hand. "You are a good teacher." She stepped back, and he saw the disappointment clear on her face this time. "We should go inside. It is getting cold." That night, Dane lay awake on his furs, staring at the ceiling. He could not keep doing this. He could not keep swallowing his feelings, pretending they did not exist. But the risk of speaking them was so great. If she rejected him, the rest of winter would be unbearable. If she reciprocated, what then? Where could they possibly have a future together? The thoughts chased each other in circles until exhaustion finally dragged him under. He woke to the sound of Grisha crying. It was soft, muffled, like she was trying to hide it. Dane sat up and looked toward the bed. In the dim light from the banked fire, he could see her curled on her side, her shoulders shaking. He was on his feet before he could think about it, crossing the room to kneel beside the bed. "Grisha, what is wrong?" She turned her face away. "Nothing, go back to sleep. You are crying. That is not nothing." He hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. "Please tell me what is wrong." For a long moment she did not respond. Then she sat up, wiping at her eyes angrily. Even in distress, she was trying to be strong. "I had a dream about my mother, about home. I woke up and for a moment I forgot where I was and I thought I could go tell her about my day. Then I remembered. You miss her." "I do. I miss her every day. I wonder if she thinks of me, if she is angry I left, if she grieves for me." Her voice broke. "I wonder if I made a terrible mistake." Dane sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to offer comfort but not crowding her. "You chose freedom over a life you did not want. That is not a mistake. But look where it has brought me. I am homeless, clanless, alone. I have no future. When spring comes and I leave here, where will I go? What will I do? I cannot go back and I have nowhere to go forward." "You are not alone right now," she laughed bitterly. "No, right now I am imposing on the kindness of a human who saved my life. But that cannot last forever, Dane. You have your own life to live. I cannot stay here indefinitely." "Why not?" The question came out before he could stop it. Grisha stared at him, her eyes red from crying. "What? Why can you not stay?" He was committed now. There was no taking it back. "Why can you not stay here with me? Because I cannot. This is your home, your life. You do not want an orc living with you permanently." "What if I do?" Her breath caught. "Dane, what are you saying?" He took her hand, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. "I am saying that I do not want you to leave when spring comes. I am saying that these months with you have been the best I have had in years. I am saying that you are not an imposition or a burden. You are." He took a shaky breath. "You are someone I have come to care for, deeply." "Care for," she repeated, as if testing the words. "More than care for." The confession was coming now, unstoppable. "Grisha, I know this is impossible. I know all the reasons it cannot work. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way. You are the first thing I think of when I wake up and the last thing I think of before I sleep. Your smile makes my whole day better. The thought of you leaving makes me feel like I am drowning again, like I did in that lake." He squeezed her hand. "I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have already fallen. I do not know. I just know that I cannot let you walk away without telling you the truth." Tears were streaming down her face again, but her expression had transformed. There was wonder there, and hope, and something that looked like joy. "You love me. You are certain." "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." She gave a sob that was half laugh. "You foolish, wonderful man. I have been falling in love with you since you dove into that frozen lake for someone you should have left to die. Every day since I have fallen harder. Every kindness, every smile, every moment we have shared. I thought I was going mad. I thought I was alone in this feeling. You are not alone. He reached up and cupped her cheek, his thumb wiping away her tears. You are not alone, Grisha. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. This is impossible, I know. Your people will never accept it, neither will mine. I know. We will be outcasts, both of us, if anyone finds out. I know. He smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. I do not care. She opened her eyes and looked at him with such tenderness it made his chest ache. Neither do I. He did not know who moved first. It did not matter. Suddenly they were kissing, her arms around his neck, his hands in her hair. She tasted like salt from her tears and something else, something uniquely her. Her tusks pressed gently against his lip, but it did not hurt. Nothing had ever felt more right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grisha rested her forehead against his. What do we do now? She whispered. Now we figure it out together, Dane said. No more talk of you leaving in spring. This is your home if you want it, for as long as you want it. I want it. I want you. She kissed him again, softer this time. I want this life we can build together. Then that is what we will have. They held each other as the fire burned low, speaking in whispers about dreams and plans and possibilities. Outside the wind howled, but inside the cabin, everything was warm. The rest of winter passed in a haze of happiness. Dane and Grisha were inseparable, finding excuses to touch and hold each other, stealing kisses when they should have been working. They were like young fools, and Dane did not care. For the first time since the war, he felt truly alive. They still had their routines, still managed the cabin and hunted and prepared for the coming spring. But everything was infused with new meaning now. Cooking together was an opportunity to stand close, to brush against each other. Sitting by the fire meant curling up together, Grisha's head on Dane's shoulder. Even the cold winter days were bearable when they could warm each other at night. They talked about the future carefully, both aware of the challenges ahead. They could not simply walk into a human town and expect acceptance. The prejudice ran too deep, and the war was too recent. But Dane's cabin was isolated enough that they could make a life here, at least for now. They could hunt and trap, maybe plant a garden in spring, trade furs for supplies a few times a year. It would be hard, but they would be together. I could expand the cabin, Dane said one evening as they planned. Add another room, maybe a proper workshop. We could make it more comfortable. I could help, Grisha said. I am good with my hands, and I am strong enough to lift the heavy beams. We make a good team. We do. She kissed his temple. In all things. February brought a thaw, the snow beginning to melt in earnest. The world outside their cabin started to wake up. Birds returned, singing in the trees. The lake ice began to crack and shift. Dane showed Grisha the garden plot he had started the year before, explaining what he had tried to grow and what had failed. My mother had a garden, Grisha said, kneeling to examine the soil. She grew root vegetables mostly, things that could survive the harsh climate. I helped her sometimes. Then you will be in charge of this, Dane decided. I can hunt and trap, you can make things grow. A division of labor. She smiled up at him, like a proper partnership. Is that what we are, partners, among other things? She stood and pulled him close. I do not know what humans call it. Among orcs we would say we are bonded mates. Bonded mates. Dane tried out the phrase. I like that. It sounds permanent. It is meant to be. Her expression grew serious. In orc culture, when two people bond, it is for life, a promise to stand together through everything. Is that what you want, Dane? Because if this is just for now, just until you grow tired of me, he stopped her with a kiss. This is forever, he said firmly. For as long as we both live, I swear it. Then we are bonded, she said, her voice thick with emotion. By my tradition, we are already married in all the ways that matter. Married. The word sent a thrill through him. My wife, my husband, she grinned. That will take some getting used to. They celebrated that night in the privacy of their cabin, speaking vows to each other that no priest blessed but felt sacred nonetheless. They promised to protect each other, to support each other, to love each other through whatever came. It was simple and perfect, and when they fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, Dane felt a peace he had never known. But peace, as Dane well knew from his years as a soldier, was often fragile. The trouble came in early March, when the mountain passes started to clear and travel became possible again. Dane had gone out early to check his traps, leaving Grisha to tend the cabin. He was gone longer than expected, tracking a deer that kept evading him. By the time he gave up and headed back, the sun was high in the sky. He heard the voices before he saw the cabin. Dane broke into a run, his heart in his throat. There were 3 men in the clearing in front of his home, all armed. They wore the rough clothes of trappers or hunters, and they had Grisha surrounded. She was standing her ground, her staff in hand, but her face was pale. I told you, I am just passing through, she was saying, her voice level despite the obvious tension, passing through his cabin. One of the men sneered. He was tall and broad, with a scarred face and mean eyes. You are squatting here, Greenskin, probably stealing his supplies while he is off somewhere. This is my home, Grisha said. I live here. You live here. Another man laughed, this one thin and weaselly. Since when do orcs live in human cabins? You killed whoever lived here, more like. No one was killed, Grisha said, but there was fear creeping into her voice now. Please just leave. You have no business here. We have business everywhere there is an orc where it should not be, the scarred man said. He drew a knife. The war might be over, but that does not mean we have to tolerate your kind in our mountains. Dane burst into the clearing. Get away from her. All 4 of them turned to look at him. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. You live here. I do. This is my cabin, my land. And that is my wife you are threatening. The words were out before Dane could think about them, but he did not regret them. Grisha was his wife in every way that mattered, and he would defend her like one. The 3 men stared at him like he had grown a second head. Your wife, the weaselly one said. She is an orc. I noticed. Dane moved to stand beside Grisha, placing himself between her and the men. Now I suggest you leave. You are trespassing. You are mad, the scarred man said. Or you are lying. No human would marry a greenskin. I am neither mad nor lying. Grisha is my bonded mate. We live here together, and you are going to leave now before this gets ugly. The 3rd man, who had been silent until now, spat on the ground. This is unnatural, an abomination. You should be ashamed. The only thing I am ashamed of is that I have to waste my time talking to you instead of you having the sense to leave on your own. The scarred man's hand tightened on his knife. Maybe we should do the world a favor and put down the orc. Sounds like we would be doing you a favor too, bringing you back to your senses. He took a step forward. Dane drew his own knife in one smooth motion. Take one more step and I will gut you. I have killed better men than you in the war. Do not think I will hesitate. The men paused, clearly reassessing the situation. Dane was bigger than 2 of them and clearly knew how to handle a blade. Grisha, too, had shifted into a fighting stance, her staff ready. The odds were more even than they had appeared at first. This is not over, the scarred man said finally. When word gets out about what you are doing here, about what you are harboring, people will come. You will have to answer for this perversion. Let them come, Dane said coldly. Now get off my land. The men retreated slowly, keeping their eyes on Dane and Grisha until they disappeared into the trees. Only when they were gone did Dane lower his knife. He turned to Grisha, who was shaking. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, checking her over. "No. They just arrived a few minutes before you did. They have been threatening, but they have not touched me." She lowered her staff, and he saw tears in her eyes. "Dane, they will tell people. What you said about me being your wife, it will spread. Everyone will know." "Good," he said fiercely, pulling her into his arms. "Let them know. I am not ashamed of you, Grisha. I am not ashamed of what we are to each other. But they will come for us. You heard them. They will not let this stand. Then we will deal with it." He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "I meant what I said. You are my wife. I will protect you with my life if I have to. No one is going to take you from me." She clung to him, her face buried in his chest. "I am afraid." "I know, so am I, but we will face it together." They went inside and barred the door, though they both knew it would do little good if the men returned with reinforcements. Dane checked his weapons, making sure everything was sharp and ready. Grisha sat by the fire, her staff across her knees, her expression distant. "We could run," she said quietly. "Leave here, go further into the mountains where no one would find us." "We could," Dane agreed. "Is that what you want?" She was quiet for a long time. "No, I am tired of running. This is our home. I want to stay and fight for it." "Then that is what we will do." They spent the next few days preparing. Dane reinforced the door and windows, stocked up on firewood and supplies. Grisha set traps around the perimeter of the clearing, the kind that would alert them to anyone approaching. They took turns sleeping, one always on watch. But days passed and no one came. A week, 2 weeks. The tension slowly began to ease, though they remained vigilant. "Maybe they were just talk," Grisha suggested one morning. "Maybe they will not actually do anything." "Maybe," Dane said, though he did not quite believe it. Men like that, full of hate and righteousness, rarely let things go. March turned to April. The snow melted completely, revealing the brown earth beneath. Grisha began working on the garden, turning the soil and planting seeds from the stores Dane had kept. It was hard work, but she seemed to take joy in it, her hands in the dirt, coaxing life from the ground. Dane watched her sometimes, marveling at how completely she had become a part of his life. It was hard to remember what the cabin had been like without her, how he had managed the loneliness. She filled every space with her presence, her laughter, her strength. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, she said, "I think we might actually be okay." "I think so too. Those men have not come back. Maybe they decided we were not worth the trouble. Or maybe they are waiting for something." Dane did not want to worry her, but he could not shake the feeling that this was not over. He was right. They came at dawn when the light was gray and uncertain. Dane woke to the sound of Grisha's traps going off, a clattering of metal that echoed through the clearing. He was on his feet instantly, grabbing his axe. "Grisha, get up, we have company." She woke quickly, rolling out of bed and grabbing her staff. Together they moved to the window and looked out. There were at least a dozen men surrounding the cabin. Dane recognized the 3 from before, plus others he had never seen. They carried weapons, swords, axes, clubs. This was not a social visit. The scarred man stepped forward. "Dane Morrison. Come out and face justice." Dane opened the door but stayed in the threshold, his axe in hand. "Justice for what?" "For harboring an orc. For the perversion of taking one as a mate. You have betrayed your own kind, and that cannot stand." "Grisha is my wife," Dane said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "What we have is not perversion, it is love, and you have no right to tell me who I can or cannot love." "You have gone mad," another man called out. "The war twisted your mind, but we can help you. Give us the orc and we will spare you. We will make it quick for her, painless even. Then you can go back to living a proper life." Rage flooded through Dane, hot and fierce. "You will not touch her. If you want Grisha, you will have to go through me. So be it. The scarred man raised his sword. We tried to be merciful, but if you want to die defending a monster, that is your choice. The men began to advance. Grisha moved to stand beside Dane, her staff ready. You do not have to do this, she said quietly. You could let me go, you could live. No, Dane said, I could not. Not without you, we stand together. She took his free hand and squeezed it. Together then, until the end. They faced the mob side by side, ready to fight, ready to die if necessary, but before the first man could reach them, a voice rang out across the clearing. Stop! Everyone froze. From the trees on the far side of the clearing, a group of orcs emerged. There were 6 of them, all armed, all moving with the coordinated grace of trained warriors. At their head was a female orc, older than Grisha, with elaborate tattoos on her arms and a sword at her hip. Grisha gasped. Mother. The older orc stopped, her eyes locked on Grisha. For a moment her stern expression cracked, showing something that looked like pain and longing. Then it hardened again. Grisha, stand aside. These humans are our enemies. No, Grisha stepped forward. Mother, please, Dane is my husband. He saved my life. These men are the enemies, not him. You bonded with a human. The older orc's voice was incredulous. After everything. After refusing the chieftain's son, you ran away and bonded with a human. I love him, Mother, and he loves me. The scarred man had backed away, clearly not expecting orcs to appear. His mob was looking uncertain, outnumbered now and facing warriors who could easily kill them all. Grisha's mother looked between her daughter and Dane, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at the mob of humans. You came here to kill my daughter. She is a monster, the scarred man said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. An animal. We were doing the world a favor. My daughter is worth 100 of you, the older orc said, her voice cold as ice. And anyone who tries to hurt her will answer to me. She drew her sword and the other orcs followed suit. The human mob took another step back. This is not your concern, the scarred man tried. This is between humans. You made it my concern when you threatened my child. Grisha's mother pointed her sword at him. Now you have a choice. You can leave this place and never return, or you can stay and die. Choose quickly. The men looked at each other, clearly debating. But faced with 6 trained orc warriors and 2 determined defenders, the math was not in their favor. Slowly they began to retreat, muttering among themselves. This is not over, the scarred man called back. We will be back with more men. You cannot protect them forever. We will see, Grisha's mother said. The mob disappeared into the trees. For a long moment everyone stood in tense silence. Then Grisha ran forward and threw her arms around her mother. You came. How did you know? I've been looking for you since you left, her mother said, awkwardly patting Grisha's back. I tracked you for months. When I heard rumors of an orc living with a human in these mountains, I knew it had to be you. I am sorry I left. I am sorry I hurt you. Hush, child. You did what you had to do. I was angry at first, but your grandmother spoke sense to me. She said you had the right to choose your own path, even if it was not the path I wanted for you. She pulled back and looked at Dane. So this is the human you chose. Dane stepped forward, still holding his axe but trying to look non-threatening. I am Dane Morrison, and I love your daughter with everything I am. I would die before I let anyone hurt her. Grisha's mother studied him for a long moment. Then she said, You are either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Dane admitted. The older orc's lips twitched, almost smiling. I am Karga, Grisha's mother, as you have guessed. These are my warriors. She gestured to the others. We came to find my daughter and bring her home, but it seems she has made a home of her own. She has, Dane said. And she is welcome to stay here as long as she wants, forever if she will have me. I will, Grisha said, taking his hand. Mother, I know this is not what you wanted for me. I know it is strange and unconventional, but Dane makes me happy, happier than I have ever been. Please do not try to take me away from him, Karga sighed deeply. Grisha, I did not come to take you away. I came to make sure you were safe, and I can see that you are, despite the mob that just tried to kill you both. She sheathed her sword. If this human is truly your choice, if he truly treats you well, then I will not stand in your way. But know that by choosing him, you are choosing a hard road. Our people will not accept this easily. Neither will his. I know, Grisha said, but it is the road I want to walk. Then walk it with my blessing for what that is worth. Karga reached out and touched her daughter's face gently. I have missed you, little one. I have missed you too. The warriors made camp in the clearing, and for the first time in months, Dane and Grisha were not alone. It was strange to have others around, especially orcs who regarded Dane with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. But Karga kept them in line, and gradually they relaxed. That night, they shared a meal around a large fire. Karga told stories of searching for Grisha, of the places she had looked and the people she had asked. The other warriors contributed their own tales, and despite the tension, there was laughter. Dane found himself sitting next to one of the younger orc warriors, a male named Drog. So you really married Grisha? Drog asked quietly. I did. Or we married each other, I suppose. We spoke vows, bonded ourselves to each other. And you are not afraid of her? Afraid? Dane looked at Grisha, who was laughing at something her mother had said. No, why would I be? Because she is an orc, because we are supposed to be monsters to your kind. I was a soldier, Dane said. I fought orcs in the war, I killed some, and I was taught to believe you were monsters, yes. But then Grisha fell through the ice and I saved her, and I got to know her. She is not a monster. She is smart and kind and brave and beautiful. She is the best person I have ever met. So no, I am not afraid of her. I am grateful for her. Drog stared at him, then slowly nodded. You are strange, Dane Morrison, but I think Grisha chose well. Across the fire, Karga was having a similar conversation with her daughter. He seems a good man, she admitted. Brave, at least, foolishly so. He is the best man I know, Grisha said, and he truly loves you. This is not just convenience. He loves me, mother, and I love him. More than I thought possible, Karga shook her head. I never imagined this for you. A human husband living in a cabin in the mountains. I thought you would be a warrior or a leader in our clan, but if this makes you happy, then I am happy for you. It does make me happy. Thank you, mother. For understanding, for not trying to take me away. I learned something in these months searching for you, Karga said. I learned that I would rather have you alive and happy, even if it is not the life I envisioned, than have you miserable or dead. You are my daughter. I love you. That is all that matters. They embraced again, and Dane saw tears on both their faces. The warriors stayed for 3 days, helping to reinforce the cabin and teaching Dane some of the orc techniques for survival in the wilderness. Karga and Grisha spent long hours talking, mending the rift between them. By the time the orcs prepared to leave, there was a peace between them that had not existed before. Will you come visit us? Grisha asked her mother. Bring news from the clan, let me know how everyone is doing. I will try, Karga promised, though it may be dangerous. There are those in the clan who would not approve of what you have done, just as there are humans who will not approve, but I will do what I can. Thank you for everything. Karga turned to Dane. You take care of my daughter, human. Protect her, honor her, love her as she deserves. If I hear that you have mistreated her, I will come back and I will not be so friendly. I understand, Dane said seriously, and I swear to you I will spend every day of my life making her happy. See that you do. The orcs left at dawn, disappearing into the forest as silently as they had appeared. Dane and Grisha stood together, watching them go until they were alone again. "That went better than I expected," Dane said. "Much better." Grisha leaned against him. "I thought I had lost my mother forever. To have her blessing, even if it is reluctant, means everything to me." "We are going to be okay," Dane said, wrapping his arms around her. "We have each other and we have allies now. We can make this work. I know we can." They went back inside the cabin, back to their life together. The threat of the mob still hung over them, and they knew there would be challenges ahead. But they were not alone anymore. They had each other, and they had support from unexpected places. Spring turned to summer. Grisha's garden flourished, providing them with fresh vegetables. Dane's traps and hunting kept them in meat. They expanded the cabin, adding a second room just as Dane had planned. It was hard work but satisfying, building a future together with their own hands. Karga returned once in late summer, bringing supplies and news from the clan. She stayed for a week, and Dane saw the joy it brought Grisha to have her mother there. They were building bridges, slowly but surely. As autumn approached and the leaves began to turn, Dane realized that a full year had passed since he had pulled Grisha from the frozen lake. A year since his life had changed forever. They were sitting on the porch of the expanded cabin one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "You regret it?" he asked. "Falling through the ice, ending up here with me?" Grisha looked at him in surprise. "Regret it?" "Dane, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes, I nearly died, but I also found you. I found a home, a purpose, love. How could I regret that? I just worry sometimes that you gave up too much. Your clan, your culture, your people." "I gave up a life I did not want for a life I chose," she said firmly. "I have you. I have my mother's blessing. I have this beautiful place we have built together. I have everything I need." "I love you," he said, not for the first time but still meaning it with his whole heart. "I love you too." She kissed him softly. "My husband, my savior, my home." They sat together as the sun set, planning for the winter to come. They had enough supplies now, more than enough. The cabin was solid and warm. They were as ready as they could be. Winter came again, bringing snow and cold, but this time Dane was not alone. This time he had Grisha, warm and strong beside him. They spent the long nights by the fire, talking and laughing, telling stories and making plans for the future. On the anniversary of the day he had pulled her from the lake, Dane gave Grisha a gift he had been working on in secret. It was a necklace, carved from wood and strung on leather, with an intricate design of vines and flowers. He had spent months on it, working whenever she was out tending the garden or gathering firewood. "It is beautiful," she breathed, touching the carving with gentle fingers. "You made this, for you, to celebrate the day we met, the day our lives changed." She put it on immediately, the wooden pendant resting just below her throat. "I will wear it always. Thank you, my love." "I have something for you too," she said, and produced a package wrapped in cloth. Inside was a shirt she had sewn from soft leather, decorated with beadwork in patterns he recognized as orcish. "I wanted you to have something of my culture to carry with you." He put it on, marveling at how perfectly it fit. "It is perfect. You are perfect." They held each other, grateful for the life they had built, for the love they had found in the most unlikely of places. The winter passed peacefully. Spring returned, and with it Karga and a small group of orcs. But this time they also brought others. Humans from a small settlement further south. People who had heard the story of Dane and Grisha and wanted to see for themselves. Among them was an old woman named Marta, who had been a healer in the war. She looked at Grisha and Dane with kind eyes and said, "My son died fighting orcs. For a long time I hated your people. But seeing you two, seeing the love you clearly share, it makes me think. Maybe there is hope for peace after all." Maybe if a human and an orc can find love, our peoples can find understanding. Others echoed her sentiment. Not everyone was accepting. Some left angry, muttering about abominations. But more stayed curious and open-minded. They asked questions, listened to Dane and Grisha's story, and left thoughtful. Word began to spread. Not just about the human and orc who had defied convention, but about the possibility they represented. More people came to visit, some hostile but many just curious. Dane and Grisha became something of a symbol, whether they wanted to be or not. "We have started something," Grisha said one evening. "I do not know if it is good or bad." "I think it is good," Dane said. "We are showing people that the old hatreds do not have to define us. That we can choose a different path. Do you think there will ever be real peace between our peoples? I do not know, but I think we are proof that it is possible, and that is a start." As summer came, they received an unexpected visitor. It was a messenger from the nearest human town, carrying a letter from the mayor. The letter was carefully worded, formal and polite, but the gist was clear. Dane and Grisha were invited to come to the town and speak about their experiences, to share their story with those who wanted to hear it. "They want us to be ambassadors," Grisha said, reading the letter over Dane's shoulder. "Representatives of a new kind of peace. What do you think? Should we go?" She considered it for a long time. "It is dangerous. There will be people who want to hurt us. But if we can change even a few minds, help build bridges between humans and orcs, maybe it is worth the risk." Then we go together. They traveled to the town in early summer, nervous but determined. What they found surprised them. Yes, there were protesters, people who shouted and called them names. But there were also supporters, people who welcomed them and wanted to hear their story. They spoke at the town hall, sharing how they had met, how they had fallen in love, how they had built a life together despite every obstacle. It was not easy. There were uncomfortable questions, angry accusations, but Dane and Grisha faced them with honesty and dignity. They did not shy away from the hard truths, that prejudice existed on both sides, that the war had left deep scars, that their love was seen as transgressive by many. But they also spoke of hope, of the possibility of change, of the power of choosing love over hate. By the end of their visit, they had not converted everyone, but they had planted seeds. People were talking, thinking, questioning the old certainties. It was a beginning. They returned to their cabin, exhausted but satisfied. "I think we actually made a difference," Dane said. "I think we did too." Grisha smiled at him. Who would have thought? A simple mountain hermit and an exiled orc changing the world. We are not changing the world. We are just living our lives. Sometimes that is enough. More invitations came over the following months. Some they accepted, traveling to speak at other towns and settlements. Others they declined, needing time for themselves, for their home, for the quiet life they loved. But their story continued to spread, carried by travelers and traders, growing in the telling. Dane and Grisha became symbols of a new possibility, evidence that the old enmities could be overcome. It was not always comfortable, being watched and discussed by so many. But they felt a responsibility to use their experience to help others, to show that a different future was possible. 2 years after Dane had pulled Grisha from the frozen lake, Karga arrived with news that made them both stop in shock. The orc chieftain and the human governor of the nearest province had agreed to a meeting to discuss the possibility of a formal peace treaty. And they wanted Dane and Grisha to be there as witnesses, as living proof that humans and orcs could coexist. "This is huge," Dane said, his heart racing. "This could change everything. Or it could go horribly wrong," Grisha said nervously. "What if our presence makes things worse? What if we are seen as traitors or aberrations instead of examples? Then we will deal with it together." Dane took her hands. "We have come this far. We cannot back down now." The meeting was held in a neutral location, a meadow halfway between orc and human territory. It was tense and fraught with danger. Armed guards from both sides watched each other warily. But Dane and Grisha stood between the two leaders, holding hands, living proof that peace was possible. The negotiations were slow and painful. There were disagreements, old grudges that flared up, moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But each time the leaders would look at Dane and Grisha, at the love and commitment so obvious between them, and they would try again. After 3 days, a preliminary treaty was signed. It was not perfect, not complete, but it was a start. Trade agreements, prisoner exchanges, and promises to respect each other's territories. The war was officially over and a fragile peace had begun. As they returned home, Grisha was quiet. "Do you think it will last?" she asked finally. "I do not know," Dane admitted. "People will have to choose peace every day, just like we choose each other every day. Some will fail, but some will succeed, and that is enough." "I hope you are right." Years passed. The peace held, fragile but enduring. More humans and orcs began to interact, cautiously at first but with growing confidence. There were still those who hated, who clung to the old ways. But slowly, steadily, the world was changing. Dane and Grisha's cabin became a waypoint for travelers of both races, a place where humans and orcs could meet on neutral ground. They welcomed everyone who came in peace, sharing meals and stories. Their home became a symbol of the new world being built, one connection at a time. 5 years after the lake, Grisha told Dane she was pregnant. They stood together in their garden, his hand on her still flat stomach, tears of joy streaming down both their faces. "A child," Dane whispered. "Our child." "Are you ready for this?" Grisha asked. "A child of mixed blood will face challenges we can barely imagine. Then we will face them together, as we have faced everything else." He kissed her tenderly. "Our child will be loved by us and by everyone who matters. That is what is important." Their daughter was born in the spring, with Karga and Marta both attending the birth. She was perfect, with green skin a shade lighter than her mother's, small tusks just beginning to show, and her father's dark eyes. They named her Elara, after Dane's mother and in the orcish tradition of strong names. Elara grew up knowing she was loved, surrounded by both humans and orcs who accepted her. She became a bridge between the two peoples, as her parents had been, carrying the peace forward into a new generation. 10 years after Dane had broken through the ice and saved Grisha's life, they stood together on the shore of that same lake. It was winter again, the ice solid beneath the snow. Elara played nearby, building a snowman with the help of her orcish cousins who had come to visit. "Do you ever think about that day?" Grisha asked, leaning into Dane's warmth. "Every day," he said. "It was the day my life began, the day I found my purpose, my love, my future. I think about it too. How different everything would have been if you had not been there, or if you had chosen to walk away. I could never have walked away, not from you." She turned to face him, her amber eyes soft with love. "You saved me that day, not just from the lake, but from a life of loneliness and regret. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted." "You saved me too," Dane said. "From isolation, from the ghosts of war, from a half-life of just existing. You taught me how to live again, how to love." They kissed, the same sweet connection they had shared thousands of times before, but still precious, still perfect. Around them, their daughter laughed, their families mingled, and the world they had helped create continued to grow. The lake ice closed over her head, and the mountain man broke through with his axe and dove for the orc. That single act of courage, of compassion, of choosing to see the person instead of the label, had changed two lives and started a ripple that spread far beyond either of them could have imagined. They walked back to their cabin hand in hand, their daughter running ahead, their hearts full of love and hope, and the certain knowledge that they had found exactly where they belonged. Together, they had built a life of meaning and joy. Together, they had helped build a better world. And together, they would face whatever came next, now and always. The end of their story was really just the beginning, a beginning they would continue to write together every single day, in love and partnership and unwavering commitment. The mountain hermit and the exiled orc had found each other against all odds, and in doing so, had proved that love could overcome any barrier, heal any wound, and build bridges where once there had been only walls. Their happily ever after was not a fairy tale ending where everything was perfect and easy. It was a real, lived experience of choosing each other, choosing love, choosing hope, day after day after day. And that was the most powerful magic of all.